of footballing brilliance, the Battle of the Buffet, and some very well documented broken metatarsals. Joining me today, as per usual, Stoke supporting Planet Football editor Mark Holmes.
Hello, hello.
Also with us is our Borough fan and European footy expert, Pete Farris.
Hello.
And today, comedian and Liverpool fan and previous winner, everyone, of Funniest Joke at the Edinburgh Fringe, Adam Rowe. Adam, welcome.
What's happening? Thanks for having us.
Good. I didn't want to put pressure on you by mentioning the Funniest Joke gong, but it's a pretty good gong to have, right?
Yeah, I mean, that award is great on paper until you hear what the joke is. Do you know what I mean? Because the jokes that win that type of award are always like a cheesy one-liner, and that's not my style at all. And it just so happens that I had one in my show, and I
know it. I think it's a good one.
Well, you're entitled to your opinion.
Okay, I'm not going to ask you to say it.
First time I've seen someone, like a comedian, go, it's just not funny.
It's not that it's not funny. It's just it wasn't in my style. And then, very fortunately, because of that award, the show had sold out, but it was full of people who'd already heard that joke. So when I did that joke, which I was contractually obliged to do as a result of winning the award, I did that joke, and a room full of people went, "Yeah. That's why we're here."
Right, this episode is brought to you by our friends at Football Index, the football stock market where you can buy and sell players for real money. If you sign up today at footballindex.co.uk, you can use our very own code. Our code is TBMIndex, as in the broken metatarsal, TBMIndex, and trade with a £500 money-back guarantee. New customers only. 18 plus, use TBM Index and you get that £500 money back guarantee. As always, you can get in touch on email, contact@planetfootball.com. And it would be great if you like to. People have been very, very kind, by the way, rating and subscribing to the podcast and with very kind comments as well. So if you've done that, we are super grateful. We don't really like asking because, you don't want to ask these things. But please go and rate and subscribe to the podcast and leave a really nice review if you enjoy it. That would be absolutely amazing. Before we just get on with today's actual podcast, we do ask all our guests, do you have any metatarsal connection other than having some?
I'm currently with a broken metatarsal that is almost impossible to fix.
Excellent.
Incredible.
Excellent news for us.
Well, that's the end of the podcast then.
We've completed it.
You have just finished.
Final podcast.
No one else can follow you after that.
A couple of years ago, I was playing six-a-side, and my little brother was playing with us, and he just had a shot, and I just put my foot up to block it, and ball sort of like snooker cued me big toe.
Right on the end.
Yeah, literally.
I see what you mean.
And sort of pushed it back in.
Ooh.
The pain was just ridiculous. And eventually it got better, and then I played football about a year later, and it just went again. And I went back to the doctor and like, just let it heal, but give it another year before you play football. And I did it again, and it went again. So now if I want to play football, I have to literally coat my foot in Nurofen gel and wrap it up. And then the next day I'm in agony, but I can just get through the game.
You're like a professional player. Can we get him through the six-a-side? It's a big one tonight, lads.
Basically, I think on Football Manager where it's give injection, isn't it?
Yeah.
Give injection to get you through.
An injection of Nurofen pain gel.
Are you going to be all right to make it? Can we get him through? Do we need an injection to get through the podcast? Or are you going to be okay?
It depends when I've got a kick.
Okay.
Mark gets pretty rowdy about 15 minutes in. So.
I might need an injection to get me through this one, to be fair.
Well, I mean, I didn't want to make you sound unprofessional, Mark, but I mean, you're struggling a little bit this morning, aren't you?
I am a little bit, yeah. I went to see Primal Scream, which was great, but I started fully clothed on the sofa, pom bears, my kids' crisps, stewing all over the floor, and I got woken up by my little lad trying to force a cookie into my mouth. He's taken one look at me and thought he needs to eat. He's doing this podcast. He needs something in his gob.
Whilst you sort yourself out, let me introduce the theme. Each episode, we dig into one element of the noughties from the sublime to the ridiculous. Today, it's a Spaniard who swapped Spain for Scousers, a manager who breathed new life into Liverpool, a tale of not one Champions League final, but two, including incredible Istanbul and a story of what could have been in the Premier League. It's the Rafa Revolution.
Torres gets past him and scores his first Liverpool goal. And Gerrard! Into Steven Gerrard. Flick through. Luis Garcia's there as well. That might well across the line anyway. He's been given. There will be no second chances if Shevchenko misses. He saved it! The European Cup is returning to England and to Anfield!
I am talking about facts. I am not talking about my impression, things that everybody can see every single week.
Now, Adam, let's come to you. You are a Liverpool fan. You are here. We are talking about Liverpool and the Rafa revolution. 16th of June, 2004. Cast your mind back. He just won the Liga. He just won the UEFA Cup with Valencia. And you hear that Rafa Benitez is taking over as Liverpool manager. What are your thoughts at that point? What are the Liverpool fans thinking?
I think there was an air of optimism about it, but there was also, we were linked with Mourinho at the same time, and he just won the Champions League with Porto. So I remember at the time, it was also seen as Mourinho was going to come to either Liverpool or Chelsea. And I think, although Rafa has gone on to become a Liverpool legend, I think at the time a lot of Liverpool fans wanted Mourinho to come and take over. So it was an air of optimism, but also like, I wonder what we could have had with that guy. But then you only have to fast forward 9 months to sort of see that was all not worth worrying about at the time. Obviously, when he came in towards the end of the Houllier regime, things were getting a little bit stagnant, just a little bit. And Houlier's a legend as well, and I've still got a lot of sort of merch from the Houllier era. Just a lot of different shirts and T-shirts and hat. Like, just I've saved everything so that one day when I've got a kid, I can go, here's a load of Liverpool stuff you'll never wear. You keep it in your loft forever.
And the kid will go
give it to your kid.
ebay.co.uk.
You can't. I've still got programs from like the 50s, 60s, 70s from like my nan and granddad that they've passed on. You can't get rid of him. You don't want him, but you can't get rid of him.
Well, you can if it's Liverpool stuff. I imagine Stoke stuff is hard to get rid of. Yeah.
Oh, unbelievable. 5 minutes into the pod, I'm struggling, and he's got a dig in.
But he has got
There's a Stoke programme from the 40s.
I just can't sell it. It just won't go.
I'll pay you to take it.
All right. Come on, lads.
You go back in your corner. You were talking about Houllier.
So I think when Rafa took over, we needed something fresh, and that's definitely what he brought. And, you know, we looked at, for a long time, the success at United and Arsenal in the 90s, and Arsene Wenger was sort of renowned for bringing a lot of French players through. And straight away, it looked like Rafa was going to try and do the same, bringing as many Spaniards as he possibly could. And I think that helps, you know, having countrymen amongst your squad as a manager, certainly as a new manager in this area of football, because the language barrier is there.
That first summer that you got 5 signings, didn't you, and 4 of them were Spanish. Alonso, Garcia, Josemi and Nunes, and then Cisse was the other one. And even in January, we went and got Morientes and Pellegrino.
And Cisse wasn't his signing either. Cisse was already lined up. So if it was down to him, every single player would have been Spanish that he brought in. And I do think that helps, though. I think that bridges the gap between the management and the players, because obviously, as a player, you end up part of the squad, and you can sort of help get the manager's message across, especially players who end up becoming integral parts of the team, like Alonso and Garcia.
And that first season, of course, is amazing. I mean, we'll talk about Istanbul, because how could you not in 2005? But the run into that.
Can you imagine if we did an episode about Rafa Benitez's first season at Liverpool and just completely ignored Istanbul?
Well, we were talking about this before, and we were like, you could do a whole podcast on Istanbul. I mean, you really
we will.
And we probably will, yeah.
But for now, we'll come back to that in just a moment. But actually, we were talking about Liverpool and Chelsea. You mentioned about Mourinho. Where was he going to go? And then you've got this. The League Cup final, of course, Gerrard own goal, Chelsea win it, Mourinho does the shushing to the crowd, he gets sent off. There's then the semi-final of the Champions League, and then you go on and win in Istanbul. That really did start one of the great football rivalries, Liverpool and Chelsea, which would go head-to-head over the next few seasons and create some memorable games. But it does start, going back to that League Cup final.
Yeah. Obviously, as a Liverpool fan, we like sort of winding the likes of Chelsea and City up and saying things like, you're not proper clubs, you're not really our rivals, Man United are our rivals, it's all about your total trophy haul, and United are the only ones who come close to us. I think we're exactly level as of right now when we're recording this podcast, which is November 2019 for anyone listening in the future.
Just before you won the Premier League that season.
Why would you do that? Why would you do that?
Dangerous.
God, that's going to be in the back of my head the whole episode.
Sorry,
now.
mate. I had to do it.
I do. Like, Chelsea are a big rival of Liverpool now, and we know that just because even in the past few years where sort of they've been in different positions, it's always a big game. and they don't like coming to Anfield, and we don't really like going to Stamford Bridge because they're both very difficult grounds to get anything out of for any opposition team, especially a rival. And it all comes down to that season, and it's all of what you've just said. Where was Mourinho going to go? I think Rafa might have ended up at Chelsea, and he did in the end, obviously. But
there was even talk, wasn't there, when Abramovich come in and Goncalves scored the win on the last day, it was Chelsea or Liverpool were going to get in the Champions League, wasn't it?
Yeah.
There was even talk that Abramovich only bought Chelsea because they got in. So he could have even ended up buying out Liverpool since they started.
I know this seems sort of, it's easy to say right now.
You're glad he did.
I'm glad that he didn't, because everything that sort of Liverpool stands for is not what Chelsea is. And if there's any Chelsea fans listening, I'm not saying your club's not legit.
They're not anymore. They were, but they've switched off.
Yeah,
They're currently giving us a 2-star rating. Thanks for that, Adam.
Not a problem. Good luck with promotion. It really was a birthing time for that Liverpool-Chelsea rivalry. Abramovich could have gone anywhere. Mourinho could have gone anywhere. Rafa could have gone anywhere. And I think the League Cup final, any cup final is big, but it does come down to the Champions League semi-final and the ghost goal and Idager Johnson whistling it past the post in the 96th minute or whatever it was. It all just sort of set the next decade and a half up. It's not quite to the level of Man United, but there's a real dislike there amongst both sides.
Look at that ghost goal. The touch, the ball over the top, right, for Garcia to get to it, is so good. It's Gerrard who sort of like flicks it outside of the boot, up into the air. You're almost like, oh, fine.
No one even remembers. I can't even remember the ball.
The ball, it's great skill on the left-hand side. It comes like towards just about, say, 5-6 yards off the edge of the penalty area. Outside of the boot, leaning back. I'm pretty sure it's Gerrard, but whoever it is, the ball goes...
Gerrard, little think over. Yeah. Barros is taken out by Petr Cech, and then Garcia puts it 3 or 4 yards over the line.
But a goal that came... The other quote, you know...
and then the back of the net just tears.
I actually read the BBC report from that night, and it didn't make a big deal about it at all. You know, we still speaking about it, all these years later. On the actual report on the night, they didn't make a massive thing of it. It was just like, it was controversial, did it or didn't it? But obviously it's just Mourinho. All this, like, you played each other 24 times in 5 years. But I do wonder if Mourinho hadn't have been there, would it have turned into this rivalry? Because obviously he'd shush the fans, like Rich said. Then with that, he called it a ghost goal, and the goal that come from the moon. It's all him, innit? Just being a shithouse as usual, and then you're starting to hate him.
Totally. But something also came out very recently. The referee from that night at Anfield where the ghost goal was scored, he said at the end of the game, he told Mourinho, if that hadn't been given as a goal, it would have been given as a penalty, and Petr Cech would have been sent off. He knows that they'd have been down to 10 men and probably 1-0 down anyway if that hadn't gone in. It was given as an advantage because we had a clear goal scoring opportunity. Yeah. So, like, it doesn't really matter, does it? And
it doesn't really matter, does it? It also doesn't for you.
Well, in that game, at that moment, would you rather have that goal go in, or would you rather have a penalty against their second choice goalkeeper and them down to 10 men? If you're Rafa Benitez and he goes, right, you can have the goal or you can have a pen and they're down to 10 men, you're taking the penalty all day long. So if anything, Liverpool got fucked over there.
That was like a skilled lawyer, wasn't it? The way you spun that was unbelievable.
But it is incredible. And then that leads on to the final in Istanbul. Where did you watch that, by the way?
I watched the final in Istanbul. So I was 13 and I watched it in St Margaret Mary's Parish Social Club.
Rocking.
In Dovecot in Liverpool. So
Get the beers in, lads.
I'm 13, my little brother's 9. And at half-time, we were both crying. 3-0 down. Thought it was over. And my dad bought us both a drink and said, don't worry, we only need 2 goals and then Gerrard will dive and get us a penalty. And he's got a knack for saying things like, when we, a year later in the FA Cup final against West Ham, when it was 3-2 to West Ham, seconds before Gerrard scored from his own back garden, me dad said he needs to score a really clear goal now. If it's anything like Garcia's goal last year, they won't give it. And then Gerrard hit and literally broke the net.
Basically, Gerrard was so good he could just say that before any game. Gerrard needs to score. Gerrard needs to score. He'll do it.
Yeah, so I watched it in that little social club.
To my shame, I turned it off.
Did you? At half time?
Yeah, to my
Never,
shame.
you can't do that. That's not.
But I was just like, I don't care enough about this to watch them get battered for the rest of this match. So it was telly off, went and did other stuff. But Dad
There's our European football expert, in quotes, saying he turned off the Champions League final.
What year was this again? 2005. So I would have been young.
Milan? No, I'm not interested in that.
Well, anyway, I'd seen a really good first half from Milan. I'd had my European fill. My dad carried on watching it, and I remember he shouted when it started to happen, and he really shouted when it carried on happening. And I thought, fucking hell, my dad's shouting at that. I didn't even put two and two together. I was like, it's just, he must be like...
Good episode of Emmerdale tonight.
Yeah, smashing his toe on something and doing his better tarsal or something. And I put it on and then watched the rest of this incredible event.
There is something about it, and that it's part of the history. It's part of the Liverpool story. That comeback is part of that, and that night in Istanbul is part of that fabric of what Liverpool is about and what I guess shapes you as a Liverpool fan.
Yeah, well, I think it's up there with. It's certainly up there in Liverpool folklore and history as one of our biggest nights. And I know this is such a typical Liverpool fan thing. It's got to be one of the biggest nights in the history of football, like ever. In any game, in any competition, anywhere in the world.
Definitely.
If you look at the Milan team from that night, every single one of them is a Hall of Fame player.
Yeah.
Like not like 9 or 10 of them, 11 of them would be an icon card on FIFA. That it's a team of legends, and we were 3-0 down, and we beat them with Milan Baros leading the front line. Jimmy Traore playing left back, Harry Kewell's right leg playing left wing for the
15 minutes.
15 minutes.
Was it about 25 minutes he got hauled off after
Baros
that?
was nominated for the Ballon d'Or that year, which always sounds crazy when I look back.
I think it was the year before, 2004.
It was after the Euros, wasn't it? It's like
Yeah, I think he finished 5th, I think, in the Ballon d'Or rankings.
Out of 4.
he wouldn't even finish in the top 5 of Liverpool strikers of the 2000s onwards, probably.
Oh no, definitely not. And I liked him. I had him on the back of one of my kits, but he was never like one of the most talented strikers Liverpool survived.
So going into that game as Liverpool fans, were you thinking big underdogs here, you know? And then at 3-0, it's like, well, it does feel like it's done and dusted, doesn't it?
I think going into the game, it wasn't like, oh, we're underdogs and what. I think it was just, oh my God, we're in the European Cup final. Our manager's first season. We've got a Scouser as our captain who embodies everything about the football club and the way we want to play. It was exciting, and this is the start of Liverpool dominating again. That's what it felt like. And obviously that didn't come to fruition, but it felt like we might be going back to the good times of the 70s and the 80s when we were the best football team on the planet.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because when Houllier left, pretty much the last thing that Gerard Houllier said publicly as the Liverpool manager, he said the fans here want to go back to the 70s and 80s, and he might be able to, but I'm not the man to do that. The parting words were, you want to go back to this time.
And then 9 months later, we sat watching the final thinking, for
the first 45 going, close but no cigar. And then after that, just, oh, Christ.
I don't think Houlier's looked back and been watching that with any sort of bitterness.
No.
I think Michael Owen might have.
Yeah, left for Real last summer, didn't he?
Because he left that summer to go and win the Champions League. They're his words. I left Liverpool to win the Champions League and then watched us do it.
The Rafa revolution we're obviously talking about. There are two things that really stick out in my mind when you think about how good managers are. And Rafa Benitez, the two things are this. Firstly, to get a team from 3-0 down at half-time to go on and win a game of such importance, you have to do or say something of significance. And the second thing that sticks out for me, and get your opinion on this, is Jerzy Dudek, who was one of the heroes of that night. Thanks, mate. Getting a new keeper for next season. Yeah. And those are the two things that, for me, when I look back at a manager and the impressiveness of being able to turn something around like that in a big game, and the ruthlessness to say, what do we need to be better next season?
The Jerzy Dudek thing. Jerzy Dudek is a Liverpool legend, an icon, in the same way that Divock Origi is.
Yeah.
In
cult
that
hero.
He's a cult hero.
For a reason.
Yeah, it's not like he was a fantastic goalkeeper for 6-7 years. He pulled off some amazing saves in one final. Divock Origi scores 2 goals against Barcelona and then 1 against Tottenham to put himself into Liverpool folklore. That doesn't mean he's going to start this season. You're not just going to put Origi in just because he's now a new cult hero.
But I scored a goal, Gaffer. I scored the goal.
But he probably got himself another contract at Liverpool. And it was the same with Dudek. It's like, look, we're very, very grateful, and this club and the fans will remember you forever. But if we want to win a league, which is what Liverpool have been after for a long time, we need a better goalkeeper.
And you got a pretty good one.
Yeah, in Mr. Pepe Reina.
Okay, lots more coming up on the podcast, including Football Fact, Football Fiction, and we'll reflect on Rafa's revolution towards the end, the second Champions League final as well. But before that, we spoke to one of the players who was instrumental in that Champions League run, including a huge goal against a certain Olympiacos. Here's what happened when we spoke to Neil Mellor. Thank you so much for joining us here on the Broken Metatarsal. We have to talk about this Champions League winning season, which I'm sure won't be too much of a trouble for you. I mean, even before that Olympiacos game, that incredible goal you scored against Arsenal.
Well, I had lots of injuries, lads, but the broken metatarsal was not one of them. So let me just before we start. I mean, it's great. 15 years on, whatever it is, and people still remember that moment, which is really nice. I'd love to be talking about playing 400-500 games for Liverpool, but unfortunately I can't. But what I can say is there was a couple of moments along the way which people still remember, and certainly the goal against Arsenal was one of those. Sort of a moment I'd always dreamed of having an impact in a huge game, which it was.
Now, Olympiacos, everyone talks about Steve, you being the hero as he so often was. Now, hang on a minute. 1-1, you come on, score one, set one up. We're missing a trick here, aren't we? You're the real hero, Neil.
Do you know what? When I came on, and I can't remember what minute it was 70-odd minute, I was absolutely exhausted. And the reason I was exhausted was because at half-time we were losing 1-0 to Olympiacos. Rivaldo had scored this free kick, and we knew we had to score 3 goals. So the whole team talk at half-time, I'm staring at Rafa Benitez saying, bring me on. Bring me on now because I can score. Get me on. But he turned around to Cinema Pong goal and said, you can come on. So I'm disappointed, but I spent the whole second half sprinting up and down the touchline, just trying to get Rafa's eye line to get me on. Get me on. And so eventually he did put me on. And the goal I scored was a cross from the left wing. Antonio Nunes should have scored at the far post. His header was saved, and it was just a little tap in for me. Rebound, and that sort of got us back into a chance to sort of qualify. And then obviously Stevie scored the wonder goal, which is a moment I'll never forget.
All about that cushioned header though, mate.
Well, it was funny because, I mean, Jamie Carragher, who we all know has been a great defender, hasn't he, over the years, and he was on the left wing. What is Carragher doing on the left wing? He dinks one up to me, and I've got a few options. I'm on the edge of the box. Do I flick it on? Do I control it? Or do I lay it off? Now, I can see 2 players to lay it off to. One of them is John Arnorisa, and the other one's Steven Gerrard. Now, John Arnorisa has got a decent left foot, but if I'm laying it off, he's going to be on his right foot. I'm 1 in about 300 are going to hit the target, so I'm thinking, no chance of laying it off to him. So I've laid it back in towards Steven Gerrard's space, and obviously we all know he's capable, and showed he was by delivering a wonder strike.
It must be a proud thing for you to know that you were instrumental when we talk about that Champions League win. Without that passage of play, you coming up, you on the touchline going, pick me, put me on. You know, that might not have happened, and you are down in folklore as being a part of that season and that Champions League win.
Yeah, well, it's not, like I said, it's nice to be remembered for playing a part, albeit a very small part along the journey. I mean, we were underdogs right throughout that season. It was a great journey right throughout the group stages, which is where I'd had that moment. And then the knockout stages, again, we were underdogs. No one fancied us. You're going to get knocked out, beat Leverkusen. Going to get knocked out, beat Juventus. Going to get knocked out, beat Chelsea. Then all of a sudden you turn up in the final against AC Milan, who were an incredible team. Some of the players they had down were just incredible. And being in Istanbul 3-0 down, you're thinking, I'm hurting here. These are my mates that I train with every day. Don't want to see them get embarrassed in the biggest game of perhaps their careers. And what they produced second half proved to be one of the most memorable Champions League finals. A lot of supporters, not just Liverpool fans, will remember. So it was nice to play a small part, albeit way back in the group stages, when we ended up winning the Champions League.
When you're watching that and your teammates are playing, are you one of those people who, when you're not playing, you're trying to head in every header that comes across, you're trying to kick it, you're sort of physically, or you just sort of sit there and just kind of quite relaxed, watch what's going on? What was going through your mind, especially in that second half when it all kind of turned around?
Well, it was mental. I mean, being inside the stadium, and I don't know, what was the 60,000, whatever it was, there must have been 55,000 Liverpool fans. There was only a small pocket of AC Milan fans. And every time we scored, there was an ambulance that went to the AC Milan fans, and sort of almost as if they couldn't believe what they were seeing as well. It was just really surreal what was going on. I was amongst 10 other players that weren't involved for various reasons. Morientes was cup-tied because he'd played in the competition earlier. Chris Kirkland wasn't involved. There was a few of the lads who had been injured or not involved for various reasons. And we were stood there. We were going absolutely mental when those goals were going. We were supporters. We were part of the Liverpool fans and jumping up and down because these were our mates, but it's also the club we represent, and we were witnessing something that we hadn't seen before.
You got to celebrate in the end as well. You made it onto the pitch, right? You're with the celebration. You're there in the photos and everything.
That was hard to get on the pitch because, like I said, there was so many Liverpool fans, and we were all in our Liverpool tracksuits. But there was so many fans in Liverpool shirts trying to get on the pitch as well. So for the Turkish stewards,
so everyone's going, I play for the club.
I'm Fernando Morientes.
I'm an injured player. Let me on.
I love the idea of Morientes. No one recognising Morientes is amazing to me.
Well, we got down to the steward, and obviously we're like, we want to get on the pitch. These are our mates. We couldn't get on the pitch. The steward was not having it, pretending he didn't speak English, couldn't understand us. So in the end, like, Morientes was there, and he'd won the Champions League 2 times previously. So he said to the steward, listen, I'm Fernando Morientes. These are my teammates. So what he had to do was get his passport out to prove to the steward that it was actually him. And so the steward, all of a sudden, from pretending he didn't know him to hugging Morientes, basically wanted to have pictures with him. And so Morientes gets on the pitch, but fair play to him. He made sure every one of us also got over the barrier and onto the pitch to enjoy and celebrate on the podium alongside the team. So had Morientes not been there, we might not have got on the pitch to celebrate with the team.
And you might not have got your medal, albeit a different medal to some of your teammates, right?
Right, exactly that. I mean, we said that AC Milan team were a great side, but for whatever reason, when we got to the podium and we'd celebrated, Stevie had done the cup lift, and there was me and Pellegrini, remember the Southampton manager recently?
Yeah.
He might have been cup-tied as well. He'd play for something like Malaga or something in the tournament. So he goes to where all the medals had been, and he pulls out 2 or 3 AC Milan silver medals. And he goes to me, do you want one of them? Went,
he's gone rifling, has he?
No problem, I'll have one of them. Yeah, that'll do. So I've got an AC Milan runners-up medal, so I'm waiting for a knock on the door from Maldini to say, can I have that medal back?
I think I've seen a few of them on eBay.
Did you sort of walk off with it around your neck or what?
Just put it in my pocket. And that was it. I mean, Liverpool won the Champions League against Spurs, didn't they, in the summer? And I think there was something like 50 medals, something ridiculous like that. But back then, it was literally the 18 lads who got changed who got the medal. So it was a lot harder to get a medal back then. And like I say, I hadn't been involved in the knockout stages. Absolutely no problems with that. But it was my little souvenir was an AC Milan medal instead.
Now, we've not mentioned Rafa yet. Tell us about him. I mean, yeah, you'd broken through under Houllier, but Rafa really, brought you into the fold. And what was he like as a manager?
Top draw. Things were changing in England at that time. There was a lot more sort of continental, certainly managers, players as well coming over to our Premier League. And we'd experienced it with Gerard Houllier and that sort of change diet-wise. When I first went down to Melwood at Liverpool, after training, we'd go to the canteen and there'd be cans of Coke, there'd be cans of Sprite, Fanta, chocolate bars. That all changed under Houllier. And then even more so under Rafa Benitez, where for pre-match, we'd have toast. We weren't even allowed butter on our toast. That was the lengths it had changed in terms of the diet and things like that.
That's not a club I'd want to play for.
Dry toast.
You know what? Rafa was brilliant. And tactically, he did things that we'd never experienced before. Houllier was only ever out there on the training pitch on the Friday before a game. Rafa Benitez was out there in his shorts every single day. And tactically, he would go through where we needed to be in and out of possession for every warm-up for 15, 20 minutes. So it became ingrained, a habit that we knew exactly what was expected. And I think that went to be shown with how good our defensive record was. I think Liverpool were really strong defensively under Rafa, and that was because of the hard work he did on the training ground.
Well, how did you find him as a bloke?
He was ruthless. He was the main man. And if you look at, I don't know, the Liverpool manager now, Jurgen Klopp, where players are getting hugs all the time, and even as a fan, you're thinking, I won't mind a hug off the manager. You would not get a hug off Rafa Benitez. Absolutely no chance. That wasn't his style. But it didn't mean he didn't care. He just did it in a different way. I remember the goal that I'd scored against Arsenal, and it was obviously a significant winning goal against the top side Arsenal. And all I got from him was a little, in the changing room, he looked at me and a little tiny thumbs up. And that was it in the dressing room after. There was no big hug, there was no well done. It was just a tiny little signal of a little thumbs up. And that was his way of sort of saying, well done. He was ruthless, but he was that way for a reason. He had a relationship where you knew he was the boss, and the lads respected that.
Obviously, you weren't in the changing room at the time, but half-time in that Champions League final, what was said? Was it words from him? Do you think that inspired the team?
Tactically, more than anything, I think Rafa would always be very calm in his delivery with his talks. I wasn't in the dressing room in Istanbul. Would love to have been there, but obviously what the boys were saying was he'd made a change, but then had to change his mind because Steve Finnan wasn't fit to carry on. So he'd said to Traore, "You're coming off." Jimmy Traore's in the shower getting showered, thinking, right, that's it, devastated him off. And before he's finished shampooing himself, he's back on the pitch. He said, "Get changed again. You're coming on," because Finnan wasn't right to carry on second half. So that was the thing about him. I mean, I can only speak about experiences myself. I've seen him in that dressing room. Olympiacos springs to mind because that was a big team talk. 1-0 down, and we need to score 3. And he was very calm. There was no panic in his voice. It was, this is what we need to do. We need to get the ball to do this between the lines, and this is how we break them down. Whereas the other players in the dressing room, Jamie Carragher certainly was very vocal. He was the one that was saying, "Come on, lads, we can do it." Whereas Rafa was very calm in how he got his message across.
He was like, "Do your stuff and I'll give you a little thumbs up at the end if you do well." Neil, thank you so much for joining us on the Broken Metatarsal. Absolutely splendid chatting to you and recalling those amazing memories.